Merrill Memo with Matthew Dickerson from Dubbo Regional Council.
I have the Mayor of Dubbo Regional Council on the line with me this morning. It's Matthew Dickerson. How are you going this morning?
Good, thanks. Very good to be chatting to you, Nathan.
Now, you're in Japan at the moment.
Yeah, we've got a long-standing relationship with a city in Japan called Minakamo. That relationship started way back in 1989. This is the 35th anniversary. And that's been a very fruitful relationship, I think, for both cities. But in particular, Dubbo, people would be very familiar with the Shoyuan Japanese Gardens and the Jurian Ceremonial Tea House. Way back in 2002 that was opened. That tea house was prefabricated here in Minakamo by a Japanese company. Then it was pulled apart, put into containers, shipped to Dubbo. 5 craftsmen from that company came to Dubbo and reconstructed that over 12 days. So if you want to see a genuine, authentic Japanese tea house, you can't get much better than that Jurian Ceremonial Tea House there in Dubbo, because it was literally built in Japan. The whole Japanese garden area was designed by people in Minakamo as well. And that tea house, as a present from Minakamo to Dubbo, is a fairly significant present, and that whole area is well utilised in Dubbo. So good relationship. We have a two-way relationship there where we have delegations go in each direction on a semi-regular basis. We also have students that come in both directions. Now, there was a COVID delay, as you can imagine. No student exchanges happened during COVID, but we started those student exchanges back up again last year, and we will have, again this year, 10 students from Dubbo, 2 chaperones from Dubbo will go across to Minakamo, and the same in reverse. So a very fruitful relationship, we believe, in both directions, and important to maintain that relationship.
Yeah, what exactly are the benefits of a relationship like this?
Well, from Dubbo's perspective, you can see the physical aspects of that straight away. So the Japanese gardens, the ceremonial tea house there, that is a major tourist attraction for Dubbo. None of that would have been possible without that relationship with Minakamo in Japan. It's not every sister city relationship that has that type of physical asset, but I think the cultural exchange as well. 10 students from Japan each year coming across to Dubbo and vice versa. I think sharing that culture, that's a really significant thing for those students. And I know, speaking to those students, I always like to speak to the students before they go and when they come back, and you'll run into them sometimes on the street, or you'll get messages from them. Just the growth and the learning and the cultural understanding they receive out of that is wonderful for our cultural exchange. And again, the same in the other direction, that Japanese students learn about Australian culture. So I think that ongoing cultural exchange, that ongoing developing of friendship, and I think in a big picture way, Nathan, bringing the whole world closer together by sharing information amongst different countries.
Sure. All right, now let's talk about funding for Kumabella Crossing.
Yeah, this is one that's been a little bit controversial on council. There have been some councils who have been keen not for us to put a bridge on Mitchell Creek or across Mitchell Creek there. It's at Kumabella Crossing on Saxa Road. And so there's been some debate back and forth. There's a culvert there now, and the problem with that culvert is every time you get a little bit of rain, Mitchell Creek goes up in height very quickly, and it makes the crossing there very difficult or impossible at Mitchell Creek. So we've had to put up with that crossing for a long time, or the residents there have had to put up with it for a long time. During the flooding events in 2022, that culvert was severely damaged to the point where basically it was only able to have small local traffic go through there. There were some councils that said we just should redo the culvert there. That was a much cheaper option, obviously, but we think it's a bit ridiculous to keep spending money on replacing that culvert only for that culvert to go underwater or be damaged again by the next flooding event. So we, as a majority of councils, went ahead with a bridge there, but we also sought funding for that bridge because it was about a $3.2 million build there. We were successful. Last week it was announced we received $2.779322 million, or let's call it $2.8 million in round numbers, Nathan. And so that was announced by the federal government that we'll receive that $2.8 million. There's still a small shortfall there between that money and the total cost of that build, but we believe we'll get the rest of that money from the state government with disaster relief funding. Even if we don't, it's still a fairly cheap build for a significant bridge, which will make that whole area much better, that Saxa Road crossing much better. It'll probably take us to about April next year to finish that bridge, so still about 12 months of pain with that culvert there, but it's a much better long-term solution.
Okay. And now there are some people who've been getting skin rashes around the Dubbo area.
Well, there's some reports in some of the local media that these skin rashes were caused by Dubbo water. So we wanted to investigate this and see what was happening. We did some testing of the water at those individual premises to make sure that the water was conforming to the Australian Drinking Water Guidelines, which it was. We did some further testing at our water treatment plant, and we do constantly test the water that comes out of our water treatment plant to make sure it does conform to the Australian Drinking Water Guidelines, and it certainly has been doing that, and it still does do that. So we don't believe any of these skin rashes that people are getting are caused by Dubbo water. There were some quotes in the media to say that it's possible that you could get skin rashes. There was a Professor Stuart Kahn, the head of School of Civil Engineering at the University of Sydney, said you do possibly get skin rashes from water from the tap, but those skin rashes could also be caused by allergic reaction or something else in the environment. So we don't believe any issues are being caused by our water. We'll continue to monitor that. And since those media releases or media reports that have come out, we've seen some additional people that have contacted council believing that their water wasn't of the right standard as well. So we've tested those, and again, they all conform to the Australian Drinking Water Guidelines. So we're quite confident with our water quality being of the required quality. And if people are getting skin rashes, certainly see their doctors, obviously, but we don't believe our water's causing that.
Now, speaking of water, there's been some temporary water restrictions recently.
In Wellington in particular, now this was one where we have sensors on our various tanks that hold our chemicals, and those sensors tell us when those chemical levels drop down to certain levels, and then we reorder those chemicals. And unfortunately, one of the sensors failed. We didn't realise one of the sensors had failed because it's not something you're checking every day, those sensors, to see where the water level's up to, or the chemical levels are up to, and we actually ran out of one of the chemicals. So we've got water in our reservoirs, and that water obviously can handle a couple of days of usage without any additional water treatment. We just asked Wellington residents last week to restrict their water usage while we basically got that chemical ordered back in again, and then we could treat water again. And the Wellington residents were very good. They restricted their water usage. They cut back on non-essential water consumption. So, for example, they didn't water their garden during that time frame, but they could still drink the water and they still could have showers. And there was no problem with the water quality because the actual water in the reservoirs had already been treated using that chemical. Once we got the chemical back in again, we could start treating water again, and we lifted restrictions in a pretty quick time frame. So it was one of those things, when we do have any issues with our water treatment, we do tell the community, we make sure they're up to date with what's happening there, and that was one of those examples where we did tell people about that. But again, the only thing people would have noticed would have been a lack of water pressure, no difference in the quality of their water.
Now, to talk about something else, the sale yards are set to be leased.
Well, not necessarily, and this is something that could affect lots of your listeners, Nathan, in the huge area that 2WEB covers. But certainly one of the things that we've looked at over the last couple of years is some changes or some advice from the Office of Local Government and some changes there. And looking at the way we currently run our sale yards, we believe that we need to change the way we run those sale yards in terms of the business operating model. Now, in doing so, we need to look at all the different options in terms of the way we run our sale yards. At the moment, we manage them, and the Dubbo Stock and Station agents also have a component that they work with. So we thought, well, if we're going to look at those as a business model, we need to look at every option. So council resolved to go out to an EOI, an expression of interest, for the potential sale or potential lease of the sale yards. That doesn't mean we're going to do it, and I want to stress, Nathan, that no decision has been made by councillors. But there's one thing that we will have to do. We'll have to change what we do at the moment in the way they run. So whether that means a sale, or whether that means a lease, or whether that means a change in the operating model in terms of the way council manages that, there will be some changes coming up with the sale yards, but we don't know what that will be yet. All options are on the table at this stage, and so at this stage we've got an EOI out there. If there's any organisation or company out there listening that would like to run or buy the sale yards, then certainly we'll take those EOIs in and have a look at those and consider all of our options.
And finally this morning, Matthew, the Air Force doing some flying training today.
Well, they're doing it over the next couple of weeks. It starts today, and this is actually quite interesting. There'll be 16 trainee pilots from the Royal Australian Air Force. they're doing a exercise Wiradjuri sunrise, so essentially part of their training. You might see some different planes flying over the skies of Dubbo, and when you notice those, we're not being invaded, we're not having a war above our skies, it's just some pilot training there, but you will notice some different planes. There's some Pilatus PC-21 aircraft they'll be flying over the skies of Dubbo over the next couple of weeks. That'll finish on the 20th of April, so just keep an eye out for that when you're in Dubbo, and you might see a few different planes around the skies above Dubbo.
I thank you for your time today.
Arigato, Nathan.
Good on you.
Merrill Memo with Matthew Dickinson from Dubbo Regional Council.